All characters in the story are over the age of 18. My brother and I had a somewhat detached relationship during our upbringing, as we each developed our own distinct personalities. This was not an uncommon occurrence, but he was 3 years older than me, and particularly during our high school years, we were not close. Each of us had our own social circle. My brother Jeff married when he was 22, and they began their life together not far from their college. I was never around long enough to really get to know his wife, other than a superficial friendship. I married 3 years later, when I turned 22, to my boyfriend from high school. We remained close throughout our relationship. I lacked confidence, which likely would have prevented me from marrying at that time. My boyfriend and I were living separately. He was home to attend community college, while I pursued my education and explored independent living. I followed their counsel to pursue higher education, as I did not wish to displease them. During my studies, I did not engage in any research. My husband remained in our family home with his parents, and during the summer months, we rented an apartment on a monthly basis, presenting ourselves as a typical married couple from the outset of our relationship. It was evident that we were not well suited for each other, despite my usual reserved demeanor. I recognized that my husband's appetite for adventure in the bedroom was not aligned with my own. While I was quite popular in high school, even though I was reserved, my boyfriend and I were an item, so I did not have to rebuff advances from other guys. However, there were numerous popular individuals who expressed a desire for the dissolution of our relationship, and my husband participated in a variety of popular sports during his high school years, although he never achieved the status of a college scholarship athlete. I would describe him as physically attractive, with a height of 180 centimeters and a weight of approximately 80 kilograms, short cropped dark hair, and a clean-shaven face. I found him attractive, and I hoped he would make a pass at me. However, I believe he would have used the word cute to describe me. I am 5 feet 4 inches and quite petite, with long dirty blonde hair and brown eyes, and my insecure feelings about the dissolution of our relationship and my belief that marriage could remedy the situation led me to seek his attention. I was hopeful that he would call me pretty, but I believe the first word he would use would be cute. I am 5 feet 4 inches and very petite, with long dirty blonde hair and brown eyes. My insecurities about the falling apart of our relationship, and my belief that marriage could fix us, led me to want to get married. However, getting married did not eliminate any of my insecurities. Ultimately, after a brief marriage, we decided to divorce. I felt humiliated, crushed, and heartbroken. The most difficult part of the process was telling my family about my failure. When I began this process, I first told my parents about it in a face-to-face meeting. The process of getting married did not eliminate any of my insecurities, and after a brief marriage, we decided to divorce. I felt humiliated, crushed, and heartbroken. The most challenging aspect of the process was informing my family about my failure. When I began this process, I first informed my parents about it in a face-to-face conversation, during which I shed tears. They were kind enough to pass the information on to my brother instead of me. A few days later, Jeff called me and reminded me that he was thinking about me and that he was available to help in any way I needed. During our conversation, I held back tears and attempted to appear confident in my decisions. However, at that time, I was overwhelmed with feelings of insecurity. We did not sign the final documents until the end of the summer holidays at school, and I had 1 more year left. In a phone conversation with my brother, Jeff, I explained that I had signed a divorce agreement, but it was a process, and it would not be official until it was filed with the court, which was supposed to happen in a couple of months. I told him the date that I was told it would happen, and it would be final. I also informed him that I wasn't going home for the summer. I informed my brother Jeff via phone conversation that I had signed a divorce agreement. However, the document would not be finalized for a couple of months, as it was still in the process of being filed with the court. I provided Jeff with the anticipated filing date and assured him that I would not be returning home for the summer holidays. I explained that I did not think it would be possible to meet with our mutual friends and discuss the dissolution of my marriage. Jeff expressed his understanding and reminded me that our parents might have a more difficult time understanding. I assured him that they would be able to comprehend the situation, as I was not planning to return home at that point. Jeff and I had several conversations on the phone, during which he made extra efforts to contact me, in an effort to ensure that I remained composed and did not have an emotional breakdown. He called me the day before during the summer holidays. I realized that it would be challenging to meet with our mutual friends and discuss the dissolution of my marriage. Jeff expressed his understanding, but reminded me that my parents might not be as receptive. I assured him that they would understand, as I was not planning to return home yet. Jeff and I communicated via phone several times, as he made extra efforts to contact me, to ensure that I would not become emotionally overwhelmed. He called me the day before the court was scheduled to finalize my divorce. I informed him that I anticipated a difficult day the following day. I can only speculate that I have been dreading this day, ever since you mentioned it to me. He replied, I am certain I will manage. I attempted to convince myself that my depression would not prevail. I inquired if there was any way I could ask you to do something that might assist me. Jeff asked, are you planning to encourage me to surround myself with friends and remain occupied? As everyone else advised, I replied, not really. I was hoping you would agree to come to the airport and pick me up, since I flew in to surprise you. I squeaked with enthusiasm and replied, now I can take a taxi, but I'm not sure where you live. He replied, I'll be right there. Will you be waiting in front of the arrival terminal? I asked, still sounding excited as I searched for my car keys, and was grateful that I hadn't changed out of my good outfit into. I'll see you soon, sis, but please drive carefully. He gave me a warning, but I ignored it and hurried to the terminal. It was the first time my brother visited me at school, and I wondered if his wife could be with him. As I approached the terminal, I noticed him and pulled over at the curb. I jumped out from the driver's side and I proceeded to the terminal with haste, disregarding my brother's cautionary advice. Upon my arrival, I immediately embraced him, expressing my gratitude for his visit. I playfully remarked on the surprise, noting its significance compared to the previous time I had placed a toad in his shoe. He teased me, suggesting that the moments of our visitation were more memorable than the sum of all previous encounters. I returned his embrace and closed my door, which was causing some inconvenience. He swiftly gathered his belongings and followed me. I greeted my brother with a warm embrace, expressing my gratitude for his presence. This is the most incredible surprise I've ever received, I said. I hope it rivals the time you put a toad in one of my shoes. He playfully suggested that we should have captured these moments together. I returned the embrace and closed the door, which had been distracting us. My brother swiftly placed his bag in the back seat and took the seat in front. Sherry's arrival was still pending. I inquired politely, would you like her to join us? My brother paused, looking at me with a questioning expression. Not particularly, but she shouldn't know about that, I replied. Don't worry, sis. She only holds your affection in half the amount you hold hers. Jeff interjected with a teasing remark, I'm genuinely delighted to see you. Once he had seated himself, he added, by the way, are you hungry? I replied, I'm starving. He agreed, suggesting that we purchase something on our way to my place. I proposed that we meet at my residence, or I could escort you to a more suitable location. I expressed my gratitude for your visit, but indicated that I was not interested in going out. I presented him with a countenance that betrayed my displeasure. Would you mind sharing a pizza? He inquired. It was an enticing proposition, but I informed him that I had already eaten, and therefore, I would not be able to indulge. Then I'll only need one, very large one, he replied. I'll have one all-meal pizza for you to choose from, he teased. I prefer mostly meat, some cheese, and olives, I replied. I was so excited that I nearly overlooked the driveway. We proceeded to the pizzeria, but I abruptly pulled the car into the parking lot. We entered the restaurant, and he placed an order. As usual for this time of day, the place was crowded, but I knew they would deliver the pizza to us quickly. I'll be right back, sis, my brother said, heading for the door and going outside. I couldn't imagine where he was going, since my car was locked and only I had the keys. I thought about going to my car and seeing if he was heading there, but I knew he would return promptly once he realized his error. Our name was called, and I made my way to the checkout window, introduced myself, and retrieved a pizza box. Despite the congestion and the physical contact from other people, I managed to turn around and make my way through the crowd of visitors, who were mostly men, to the door. When I left, I noticed that Jeff was coming in with 12 packs of beer. I realized that he had gone to the convenience store for beer. "It's a good idea I didn't have anything to drink for you," I said. "It's a good idea. I didn't have anything to drink for you," he replied when we arrived at my car and boarded it. "The pizza was fast," he said as he peered into the back seat where I'd put it. "Then he bent down and flipped back the lid to make sure it was ours," I added. "Once more. They have a system that delivers pizza faster than any other place in the city." "I'll say it looks good," he said, returning to his seat. We then drove up to my apartment complex. "It's a small apartment," I warned as I ascended the staircase to the second-floor apartment, carrying a pizza and a 12-pack of groceries. Jeff followed me, carrying his luggage. He expressed dissatisfaction with the rental property. When we arrived at my door, he set down his bag and took the pizza box from me so I could open the door. I informed him that this was merely a studio room, and I opened the door to create a small space for him. I told him not to worry about it and to enjoy the pizza while we caught up. I informed him that I'm getting divorced. "What else do you need to catch up on?" I asked. He started looking for plates, but Jeff rejected the idea of using a glass and opened a can of cold beer. "Do you want to talk about it? Would it do you any good?" he asked. "What do you want to know?" I asked. Handing my brother a plate with 2 slices of pizza, "Was there something that went wrong, or was it a lost love in general?" he asked. "When we were together, he was happy to live together as if we were. We were roommates, and when we were apart, we missed each other like friends." I explained. "Are you saying that making love was bad?" Jeff asked, "Is there a lack of love in your relationship?" I replied, when my appetite returned, and I reached for a slice of pizza and put it on my plate, "If that's the case, then my marriage is doomed to fail." Jeff said, "You two are good at it, aren't you?" I asked, not believing what my brother had just told me. "I think most married couples have a problem with." I inquired about the nature of the issues he was experiencing. I asked if he was truly interested in learning more about them. He expressed concern about the level of personal intimacy involved in the discussion. He described the situation as mundane and routine, as if it were part of his professional responsibilities. I suggested that adding an element of excitement could revitalize the conversation. He agreed that continued discussion might be dispiriting for both of us. I agreed, but I had one final question. I said, always so inquisitive. Jeff took another slice of pizza out of the box and put it on his plate. "This is a very personal question," I warned. "I'll give you an honest answer. Have you ever cheated on Sherry with another woman?" I asked. I expected him to be shocked, but "I did it," he replied, but he didn't sound proud or remorseful. I asked why he didn't seem to feel guilty, given that he had cheated on Sherry with multiple women. He said he didn't expect me to ask, and that he didn't feel guilty about cheating on Sherry. I inquired about whether he had cheated on his wife, to which he responded that he had not. I then asked whether he felt guilty about his actions. He explained that he did not feel guilty when he committed adultery, but rather worried about being caught. I stated that I could not imagine cheating on my wife. I explained that my first extramarital relationship occurred about 6 months after our wedding with a woman who gave me something that my wife said she would never want. I probably should not have been so open. I inquired about the frequency of his infidelities. He stated that he never cheated on his wife, although he acknowledged having engaged in extramarital relations on one occasion. He described the woman with whom he had been unfaithful, explaining that she had expressed sympathy for his situation and sought to remind him of the pleasure they had shared. I inquired about the nature of their relationship and whether he had any interest in pursuing it further. He replied that he did not wish to discuss the matter any further. I then asked if they had any subsequent encounters. I inquired about her current relationship status. He stated that he had never been unfaithful to the same woman twice. He then proceeded to enumerate the number of women he had slept with. He took his time answering, and I was uncertain whether he was calculating the number of times or devising a way to tell me he didn't want to tell me. He then stated that it was 7. I expressed my astonishment. He replied, "Sometimes it just happens." I then asked, "Aren't you afraid you might?" I asked him how many different women he had slept with. He took his time answering, and I wasn't sure if he was calculating how many times or coming up with a way to tell me he didn't want to tell me. He finally said 7. I was shocked. Sometimes it just happens, he said. Aren't you afraid you might catch something? I asked. One was with a colleague. Her husband was out of town, and she wanted to have a drink after work instead of going back to an empty house. We ended up at her house. He said another time, I was at an open-air concert and was standing in line for the toilet when a girl behind me grabbed my hand and went with. I inquired about the colleague's whereabouts. Her spouse was out of town, and she expressed a desire to socialize after work instead of returning to an unoccupied residence. We proceeded to her residence. On another occasion, I attended an open-air concert and was waiting in line for the restroom when a young woman behind me took my hand and guided me to the restroom. I inquired about her appearance, and she replied that she was quite attractive and young. I speculated that she might have been at least 18 years of age, in case our encounter was discovered. He posed the question, "Do you suspect my ex-partner may have been unfaithful?" I responded, "It would be unexpected if he had not been." "Have you two been intimate?" he continued. "Are you feeling fatigued?" I glanced at my watch and observed that it was nearly 10 hours, and I knew that it was midnight for him according to his internal time. He looked around the small room I lived in and couldn't help but notice the double bed in the corner and a few other pieces of furniture besides the 2 bar stools we shared behind the small kitchen counter. I don't want to sleep, but I feel like I could sit or lie down and relax," he said. "You're my guest, so I'm giving you my bed," I replied. "I'm going to be a gentleman and I'm not going to agree to anything." "It's not fair to make you sleep on the floor," he replied. "I hope I have the self-dash. I don't want to sleep, but I feel like I could sit or lie down and relax," he said. "You're my guest, so I'm giving you my bed," I replied. "I'm going to be a gentleman and I'm not going to agree to anything." "It's not fair to make you sleep on the floor," he replied. "I hope I have the self-control not to attack my own brother," I said. "It all depends on you. I can sleep on the floor or share a bed with you, but I won't let you sleep on the floor." "What are you going to sleep in?" I asked. "I have a pair of gym shorts that I can wear," he replied. "You can change in the bathroom," I explained. He opened his bag, which was on the floor in the corner of the room, took out some of his things, such as a toothbrush and the like, along with shorts, and went into He exited the bathroom and closed the door. I then got out of bed, prepared to brush my teeth and get ready for bed. Upon exiting the bathroom, I found Jeff sitting on the edge of the bed. I inquired as to which side of the bed he would prefer to sleep on. I could get up once or twice a night, so I offered to stand on the side of the wall so I could climb over him. He requested that I sometimes sleep pressed up against the wall, to which I acquiesced. I then pulled back the sheet. Jeff exited the room, leaving the light on and the blanket unrolled. He climbed into bed and settled down on the bed, away from me. "I'm fully awake now," he whispered. "I'm not tired either," I replied with a chuckle. "Did I pin you against the wall?" he asked. "I'm right here," I said. "I'm not cramped. I have plenty of room here," he replied. "I'll move a little closer to him," I said, moving to the center of the bed. "I'll roll onto my side, facing the wall, turning away from him," I continued. "Keep it up and I'll snuggle up to you, not?" The wall teased. "Do you prefer the cuddle?" Jeff inquired. "Do you fall asleep faster?" I replied, "Would you like to hug me?" He responded, "I'm not sure if I should do it or not, but he's my brother. I think I'd like to hug you." I replied, "I'll move slowly." The man inquired about the quality of the interaction. I responded that it was satisfactory. He expressed his desire to embrace me. I replied that I was willing to do so. We moved closer until our backs were touching, and he embraced me. I stated that I loved him and was pleased to have his presence. He replied that he was glad to be there. I asked what he was thinking about. I teased that I was in bed with him, but I inquired about his thoughts, to which he responded that he was thinking about me. I then asked if it was possible for him to think about anyone else. He replied that he was as attracted to me as he was to any woman he knew. I then asked if he would be willing to get out of bed and sleep on the floor. He replied that he did not want to do that. I said that I understood, but that he should stop. He replied that he did not want to stop, but that he was unsure about how far they should go. I told him that I was not going to do anything that he did not want me to do. He replied that it was not about what he wanted, it was about whether it was something they could do. He should simply say the word and I would cease. He whispered, "I love you, sis." I replied, "I love you, too." He said, "Is there something your wife wouldn't do for you?" I asked that and more. He replied, "What kind of things?" I asked, "Things for example?" He said, "I like things that you wouldn't do to me either." I replied, "Your husband should be married to my wife." He said, "Looks like they make a good couple." I replied with a chuckle, "What kind of? Do you have any experience with this?" Jeff inquired, addressing only a couple of guys a couple of times. "Are we going to do this?" Jeff asked. "I know it's wrong, but I can't stop," I replied. "Did we really just make love?" Jeff asked. "You were amazing," my brother said. "What are we going to do now?" I asked about us. "What did we just do?" Jeff asked. "What do you want to do?" Jeff asked. "Maybe we should forget that this ever happened," I suggested. "I could pretend it," I replied. "This never occurred, but I assure you that I will always remember how it transpired and how exceptional it was." He responded, "You would never inform anyone, would you?" I inquired about my potential benefit from disclosing the information. He replied, as if he could not fathom that I would engage in such malevolent behavior. "If you wish to avoid this behavior in the future, simply inform me and I will refrain from any further contact." He assured me that it was early in the morning, and we decided that we should set aside our desires and rest.